Okay, so how do we calculate the unemployment rate? It is not terribly difficult. The one thing you want to remember is we do not count discouraged workers. So we look at who is employed, and so we first have to calculate the entire civilian labor force. And that would be people who are working, people who are part-time employed, and those who are unemployed. The key here is we can easily figure out um, who is part-time and full-time employed just by reports that we get from each company. Don't forget each company makes a report on its own force. They have to pay Social Security taxes, they have to file income taxes so the government has a system for tracking who's employed. And then the unemployment rate, one other thing I should mention, it goes back to like the early 1900s, so a lot of the way we do our methodology hasn't changed since then, which has been an argument to some extent. I'll get into that. But long story short is we do not count discouraged workers, and that's where the question comes in. If somebody has stopped looking for employment, a discouraged worker, we won't count them in the civilian labor force. So that might be somebody who has been looking for a job for a while and decided, hey, I've had enough, I don't want to look anymore. We would not count that person anymore. Some have argued that is underrepresenting unemployment, that those people would actually work if they had jobs. Not always the case. I mean, sometimes you'd get a couple who is raising a family, and one member of the couple might say, you know what, I'm going to stay home and raise the children, or whatever, or we'll start a family. And so they are not really truly discouraged anymore. They're a person who was looking, but now maybe they'll decide, we'll live within a budget or a different budget, and and I'll stay home, or I'll do, who knows, not go back to work. So discouraged workers, just the one thing you need to know is discouraged workers are not part of the unemployment part of the unemployment rolls. So really all we need to do at that point is take the part-time employed and the full-time employed and the unemployed. And who is unemployed? It's people who are 16 years or older. They're available to work full-time for the past 4 weeks. They're actively looking, so they're not discouraged. And we take out temporary laid off workers. So once we've calculated all of that, we have the unemployed, the employed, and the part-time employed. So the unemployed, the employed, and the part-time employed, those three things make up the civilian labor force. Then we take the people that we are considering unemployed, we divide it by the civilian labor force, and we get the unemployment rate. Keep in mind another couple of things about unemployment. The first thing is that it's been running at about 3.5% over the last number of years. In the past, that would normally trigger an inflation worry because the government or the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government, the Treasury Department, they would worry that if there are too few people, there's a natural rate of unemployment, which is about 4 to 5%. And why is there a natural rate? There's a healthy rate of unemployment. People leaving colleges and finding new jobs, people moving to different jobs, people moving to different areas. That's healthy unemployment. In a capitalist society, we want to see people transitioning from one job to another because they've increased their skills or because there's better opportunities. The problem is if too many people are working, there's not enough people available in the pool for businesses to draw from. And if that's the case, they have to raise wages. Think about it. If they don't have enough people to hire, then they've got to offer higher wages to get people in to hire people. Now that could cause inflation, and we'll talk more about inflation in another video. But how does that cause inflation? Because they've raised wages. And if wages raise, the only way the company can continue to make money is by raising prices. And then we will get what we call a wage price spiral. We'll talk more about inflation in the future, but definitely unemployment and inflation go together. We're going to do a video on the Phillips curve. That gives us the relationship between unemployment and inflation. But for here, I wanted to give you a basic overview of unemployment. So we don't count discouraged workers, remember that. We worry that when too few people, when we fall below the natural rate of unemployment, we may have inflation. And Okun's Law, which is another thing we'll be talking about. Okun's Law is a relationship between GDP and unemployment. And furthermore, about, in terms of the kind of economy we're in now, even though more people are working and the unemployment rate is not as great, we are not seeing those kind of inflationary pressures. And the reason why we're not seeing them is probably because people aren't, and we talked about this in the production possibilities video, people are probably not making as much or producing as much as they normally would. So we still have a soft economy. But all these things go hand in hand, and it's something that the Federal Reserve keeps a keen eye on because unemployment, the twin objectives of the Federal Reserve is to keep people employed and to keep inflation and the value of money at a certain level. Things that we've talked about in the past, things that we'll continue to talk about because they all go hand in hand, and it's really important that you understand how it works. Any questions, any further questions, please, as always, put it in the comments, and if you're in my classes, just feel free to ask. But that's a little bit on unemployment. It's a brief overview. Thank you.